let's talk about being disappointed. Being disappointed in dating specifically. So, like I said in the previous video that was about chemistry, I ended up being disappointed in the person that I had amazing chemistry with. And so I realized that usually when you're disappointed, it's things you already, it's usually in situations where you knew it wasn't going to work in the first place. Even like, when it's not dating, like there's certain things where you just, you have this feeling, but you continue on and then you're disappointed. And it's just like, should you really have been disappointed? You kind of already knew, like, but you end up telling yourself a story, right? Where you think something is gonna, work, but it doesn't. So, like I said, this person, we had different lifestyles. When I say different lifestyles, I mean, like, he, was a father. Ideally, I don't want to date anyone with kids, and which I wasn't so adamant about, like, back in the day. And then I dated somebody with kids, and I was just like, it kind of just depends. I know it depends on the person. Really, for me, I want to be able to be a priority, and it's like if you're dating someone with kids, you're not gonna be a priority. That's not for everybody. That's for me. Obviously, if people didn't date people with kids, like I wouldn't have my little sisters. Some of my best friends wouldn't be here. So, whatever. That's fine. That's fine. So for some people, it's not my thing, and I've tried it, and it was okay. It depends on the person. Again, like I said, like how they handle things, how they juggle whatever is in their life. With somebody that I kind of was talking to, like, he definitely didn't make a lot of time for me. It was priority. Someone else, not so much. And then the person that I recently went out with, like, he seemed pretty available. So I was like, okay. But the thing is, like, I already knew that's not what I wanted. I literally would pass everybody that was where it was clear that they had kids. Pass. Like, I didn't care I don't want to read your profile. Pass, because I know that's not what I want, right? So with him, I was going to pass. I didn't pass, and I didn't pass only because he actually had messaged me. So he made this new thing where you can message somebody before you like them, so that gives you, a higher chance of them liking you back. Because once you actually connect to message with them, that means you're matched, right? So I was honestly just answering his question. I wasn't trying to like him, but he asked me a good question, so I answered it, and so that's how we got matched. And otherwise, I would have passed. So because I didn't want anyone with kids, and I'm not too sure if I would be flexible on that again. But his situation was a little bit more extreme than I've actually dealt with in the other two guys that I've dated who had kids. Whereas they had, they were in a relationship where or one of them was like married for a few years or whatever. But this was like, I never wanted to be with somebody who had like an entire life before me. Like, if I see myself with somebody, I see myself married to somebody, I don't want to be with somebody who had an entire life before me. He was literally married for 15 years. He had he had a few kids, and that's just not what I see for myself. And so that's why I knew, like, when I started talking to him, I was like, we're just gonna be friends. Like, he seems like a cool dude. Like, for real, we have so much in common. And that's why I was just like, if he didn't have kids, like, I would have liked him. What I did, like I said, I ended up liking him anyway, just because you kind of have to in order to like respond. But whatever. It's like, this is one of the things that I knew. So, and then you meet the person and you have this chemistry, and like I said, you can't just look at that when I already knew like that lifestyle wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want somebody who had an entire other life before me. That's just, it's a lot. And again, and on the flip side, like, my lifestyle didn't really match with his, even though, and it's like things that we both knew. Like, so obviously, like I said, I knew that's not what I wanted. And I went into meeting him not thinking I was gonna go anywhere until like I actually was talking to him. And on his side, like, with the way my life is and my morals and everything, that ended up not, meshing with him, even though this is stuff that he knew before, like, anything. Like, I make it clear, like, I'm not having, there's gonna be no sex. Like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not doing that until I'm married. And I started putting that out there, like, on my dating profile, just because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste anyone's time. There have been other guys that I've dated in the past. Like, I used to just tell people that on the first date, but then I realized, like, it's the only thing they think about then after that. And then I went for a while without telling anybody anything. And with the few guys, I didn't even have that conversation. Like, like one of the guys that I dated who did have a kid, like, I dated him for a few months, but, like, I never told him that, and it didn't come up because that's not where that was in our relationship anyway. So I see, I don't know, the benefits to both things, because, like, that ended on its own without that even being a thing, but without it being a factor. But this is whatever, something I just put right on my dating profile because I did talk to somebody that I was kind of digging, and then he found out, and it was just like, that wasn't for him. And I was just like, oh, well, I could have saved myself some time. So I started just putting it on my profile, right? And so this is like, before I knew him, before I talked to him, like, you knew that about me. But then that ended up being one of the reasons why you're just like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Cause like, it's like, I've been married before, and I don't see me doing that. But it's like, you already knew that, and we talked about it, and you were like, yeah, I can do that. But then I guess you realized you couldn't. But I'm just like, okay, whatever. But I feel like you probably should have known that before. You probably did. But whatever, chemistry and attraction, he was like really attracted to me, and vice versa, whatever. And that's the stuff that will mess you up, because it's like, clearly we both knew that this was, lifestyle wise, not what we were looking for, right? So like I said, and being disappointed, it's usually the stuff that you already knew to begin with. Even before that, like, I haven't dated for a while, but there was like a situation where I thought was going to be something, and you can, like, talk yourself into these things, because I had a friend, like, confess his love for me and all this stuff, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I was not interested in him at all. I didn't see that happening at all. And then I was just like, oh, well, and then, like, he was like one of your best friends, and isn't that ideal? And then you tell yourself these things, right? And then that just actually went so far left. That whole thing went so far left, and now I don't even talk to this person anymore. And we were friends for like over 7 years, like super close. So it's like, you knew, and like the whole time we've been friends, I've had like a bunch of my girlfriends like, why aren't you dating him? Why aren't you dating him? I'm like, no, like, I'm not interested in him. Like, that's not it. Like, he's like, no. So when the whole thing happened, and I told them, and they're like, oh my gosh, he said he loves you and all this stuff and whatever. I'm like, no, I'm like, you do not understand. Like, he's so not even close to being ready, and he's just, I've never seen this. This is not it. I've never seen that. And but then you tell yourself these things, because you're just like, well, So, and it goes back to like first instincts and intuition. And I think we do such a disservice to ourselves with second guessing ourselves, and with there being first impressions, meaning there's a second impression and all that stuff. But no, your first impression is what it is, right? I've had so many like guys that I've dated in the past where my first impression was I didn't like them. And it's like, I didn't know them to not like them, but just seeing them around, I'm like, I can count like a few guys that I spent way too much of my time with. I was just like, I didn't like right off the bat. And that was my first impression. That was my first instinct. And you give yourself, and you like, and you battle with yourself, because it's like, oh, are you judging something or whatever? And she gives a second chance. But it's like, no, your first intuition is correct. Had I gone with that, I could have like saved myself a lot of time and heartache. Like with my first love, I initially just did not like him. I didn't want to be bothered with talking to him at all. And then I know I love him. Like one night we had this amazing conversation out of nowhere, and then like, yeah. So it's like, no, because that ended so badly. So your first intuition, like it's always correct. And like I said, we do ourselves a disservice with questioning what our gift is that is naturally given to us. Because we're just like, oh, we're being whatever. But it's like, no, listen to yourself, because that's important. That's for a reason. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to treat somebody badly or you can't, like, you know, talk to them or whatever. But if your first intuition is that you're not digging there, you're not feeling their vibe at all, then like, why? Do you like say, oh, I'm gonna give them another chance? No, don't give them another chance. And I think that's so like opposite from what like we've been taught growing up. But really, a lot of times what we've been taught growing up is to not trust ourselves, and that's just so wrong. So like, again, like all the times that I've been disappointed, stuff that I already knew. You know, like I said, with this, you know, the recent guy that I had this chemistry with, my first intuition was like, you know, we could be friends. Like, he's a cool dude. Like, you know, just chatting with him, you know, before we actually met was super cool. I was like, we could be friends. That was my first instinct. And had I kept my first instinct, I would have saved myself like the huge sadness and disappointment I felt, you know, when that like ended. So, so yeah, I think that's a good lesson to learn, is you listen to your intuition. You know, it's there for a reason. It's literally, I think, our direct connection to God, to, you know, our higher source. And if we actually listen to it, we'd be disappointed so much less in life. So, you know, and that's I think that's a really good lesson to learn. So I am actively working more on listening more to my intuition, which is why I wanted to take a break, because I knew like I said, that things were a little bit out of whack, that I just wasn't like as connected anymore. And so that's why I was like, whole like social media break pretty much. But yeah, like just I encourage you to think about the times that you've been disappointed, and think about if you already knew to begin with that probably wasn't going to work, whether it be like a job, or whether it be like working on a project or whatever. If you just, something in you was just like, that's probably not it, but then you forged ahead anyway. You know, think about, you know, when it ended, or it fell apart, or it failed, or something. Like, did you already know that was going to happen? Because you could have saved yourself some time, some trouble. So, yeah, I think that's a huge lesson to learn, is just being more open to listening to yourself and to trusting yourself. And is there anything else I want to say on that subject? No. So that was disappointment. Disappointment, and how that ties in with your first instinct, with your intuition. Also, going back to the disappointment, I think what we have to remember, and what I always like to remember when when I'm disappointed, is that rejection is God's protection. You know, when things don't work out, when things fail, that is God protecting you. In this situation, and in my last situation, when things ended, I was just like, okay, like it hurt. I don't know what just happened to my camera, but what we have to remember is rejection is God's protection. Because if these are the stories that we tell ourselves, if we can literally talk ourselves into something else that we knew isn't probably going to work, then when it falls apart, it's like you really have to be thankful. Like, rejection is God's protection. Protection against like what you really would have allowed yourself to go to because of chemistry, or because of whatever story you tell yourself. And so when it falls apart, say thank you. You know, be so grateful, because clearly you knew there were things that turned you off, or that were like, this isn't probably gonna work, but then you somehow got yourself into a relationship, or it's a situation, or whatever, or into a job, or whatever. And then when it falls apart, when you get fired, when you get dumped, when you get whatever, you know, just be thankful, because you know, I like to think about that when I'm disappointed, and I'm just like, okay, thank you, because clearly it wasn't supposed to work. You know, clearly I'm being protected from something I would have allowed myself to get pulled into because of other reasons. So also I like to think about that when I'm disappointed. Rejection is God's protection. So think about that when you're disappointed. Just be thankful. Just say thank you. When you're disappointed, just say thankful. Just say thank you, God, for having more wisdom clearly than I, because I would have allowed myself to be in a situation that I am better than. I'm better than, being pulled into something that isn't what I ideally saw for myself. But then, you fall in love, and then you whatever, and then it's like, but they're a good person. But is that what you saw for yourself? No. So God is always protecting you. So think about that when you're disappointed.